Hi there, my name is Dr. Latoya Smart and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Arizona. I was born and raised in Jamaica and I left Jamaica in my mid-20s to pursue graduate school in the United States. I am a charter member of the Jamaica Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I volunteered to submit this video to help those who might be struggling with trauma in their lives. So I want to start off today's session by just going over what trauma is. Trauma is known as post-traumatic stress disorder or acute stress disorder as the official diagnostic categories. However, a traumatic experience has to do with being victimized or witnessing a violent or horrific and frightening act. So persons who may have been sexually molested, inappropriately touched, or sexually assaulted, persons who may have been victims of a physical attack. It could be ranging from very harsh spankings and beatings. This happens a lot for sure in Jamaican society, so a lot of us may remember being spanked by our parents. But when it comes to physical abuse, that involves leaving severe bruises or breaking the skin, using implements other than the hand that cause severe damage to the individual. So we covered sexual abuse, physical abuse. We also have emotional, verbal, or mental abuse. And this is seen in children who are being severely criticized and they are essentially being called names by their parents, or the parents or guardians may use derogatory terms. So all of these can be examples of abuse and trauma that could be experienced throughout one's lifetime. And of course, a few other popular examples include being a veteran or being in the army, being exposed to war and such circumstances where you had to end someone's life or you witnessed the violent end of many lives. Persons who probably were raised in war-torn countries, they have seen so many violent acts, whether it's rape or murder. So remember, being exposed to trauma does not necessarily mean you have to be the victim. It also applies if you have witnessed the event. Let's say you witnessed domestic violence in your home between your parents or your loved ones, or you were involved, you're an adult and you have been involved in violent relationships or controlling relationships. All of these are examples of trauma. So now that we have addressed what trauma is and some of the examples or the situations, let's look at some of the signs and symptoms. So you may see high levels of anxiety or depression in the individual, such as panic attacks, fidgeting, nervousness, afraid to be around people, very nervous in crowds, not wanting to be touched. We might see temper tantrums or outbursts in children. We might even see aggression in children. So there could be a lot of anxiety, but the opposite could also be true, and we could see quite a lot of aggression. It can affect future relationships and trusting other persons. The person might blame themselves, so we're looking at negative cognitions. You think that it's your fault. Maybe you were brainwashed to believe that it was your fault, or you figure that there's something that you could have done to help yourself or to help the other person that you witnessed being victimized. And other emotions, kind of going back to depression, severe sadness or low mood, loss of motivation, loss of energy, because you just feel you feel that your future is hopeless. You feel that I have been victimized in this horrible way, and I'm always going to be remembering this event, like the flashbacks, or being triggered by certain places and situations and people that remind you of the event. Nightmares, night terrors, inability to sleep. That can lead to some severe depression where you just don't feel like you want to go on. There might be thoughts of suicide. There might be urges to self-harm, cutting, burning, scratching, just to overcome all of this pain that you essentially did not, or you were not able to express or to just talk to someone about. So those are a few of the signs and symptoms of trauma that we'll see in some children and some adults. And ultimately, once we see these signs, the first step we want to take is to report the incident to the necessary authorities. Once you get the information of who, what, when, and where, you don't want to push too much to get details of the abuse, because that will contaminate the information, especially if police investigations are necessary. That's number one. Number two, actually probably even more important than number one, you don't want to re-traumatize the child, especially, or re-traumatize anyone, because it brings up those same symptoms that we just listed, and they become so upset, and then for days afterwards, maybe even weeks, they are struggling with those symptoms after we have gone about our business, because we have now collected this information. And sometimes we're just curious. You know, in Jamaica we say we're fast. We just want to know, oh my gosh, what happened? And it's all of this shock, and all of it may be genuine, but it's not necessary to go into the nitty-gritty, the gruesome details. Once you get an idea that, okay, I was sexually abused, or, you know, I witnessed this horrible thing happen, we can leave it at that. We don't need to dig into the details. So in the next session, I'm going to talk about some ways to cope with symptoms of trauma if you or a loved one, or maybe a student of yours, if you're a teacher, is suffering from trauma. So until the next session, take care of yourself.